to intro this, and this is probably your favorite NBA podcast that you don't need ad blocker to enjoy, because we're not monetized or we're getting any ads. So welcome back to another week of discussing the NBA with two of us that have spare time.
Two
That's
of
why we
us.
call ourselves.
That's not even our freaking name, man.
No, it's two guys with spare time. I'm just trying to keep it colloquial, but we're here. So we're now hitting that nice period now where teams are starting to settle into who they are. So we're hitting the teen number of games played. We're approaching that 20-game mark, which inadvertently becomes the quarter mark of the season. We're edging ever closer to whatever this mid-season, in-season tournament's going to look like. And I think the big thing that we're noticing, I'm looking at the standings currently, is that now we have our brackets. And I'm on the NBA site currently. They've actually got a really nice system. They have the top six, and then it's, sectioned off to the play-in teams, and then it's sectioned off to the teams out of playoff contention. And I guess I'm going to lead us to the West first, because as of the 20th of November, at 5:10 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, the Minnesota Timberwolves are your number one team in the West with a record of 9-3. And Oklahoma City right behind them with a 10-4 record, and then Denver sitting there at 9-4. Interesting teams at the top, and obviously, in a week's time, this will drastically change. But the Minnesota Timberwolves are the team specifically I want to fixate on. I almost want to, if we had an editor, I'd want to splice together my take from last season, because I think I was really high on the Timberwolves doing something unique with the Rudy Gobert and Cat pairing. And that never panned out last season. Cat gets injured. I think there's a bit of teething going on with Gobert being slotted in. Anthony Edwards also maybe being a little less mature than he is currently, or less experienced. But is that trade starting to click for them now, right? Obviously so much conversation was around they gave up so much, players and picks, etc. And all they did was, get bounced after the first round. But currently, that looks like a really good move. That looks like a trade that could go down as one of the best trades if it had occurred this season, not last season. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? It's aging well.
So you're suddenly on the T-Wolves train, right? The hype train right now. Is that what's going on here? They're 9-3, we're 12 games into an 82-game season, and you're suddenly considering going to NBA.com and buying a Rudy Gobert jersey. Is that what you're trying to tell me, Nick?
Well, look, I don't want to just fixate on the record here. Two of those wins are against Denver and Boston, respectively, which both of us would safely put in our top four of finals candidates. So they're not just winning the games that they're supposed to, and we can point to the schedule being that. They're actually beating good teams.
I think, look, we talked about T-Wolves, I think, last week even a little bit, right? And we talked about Mike Conley specifically. Yeah. And I think that Mike Conley arrived, just before the trade deadline, I think, last season. And obviously, Cat was out at that point, and we never got a full look at the four of them, with Ant Edwards obviously on the floor until this year. And look, I think what we spoke about was obviously Mike Conley has given them a level of, just someone to steer the ship, right, and to run the point and to sort of put them in the picture that they are right now. I still don't feel though that, look, maybe right now they're probably on track to finish top six. Yeah, I don't know. Are you trying to make a claim here that they're going to grab the number one seed right now? Because I'm not going to buy that. All right, but look, definitely say that barring any crazy injury, let's say Cat's out again or something like that, and Edwards gets injured, they could probably finish and should finish top six. But you sort of have to feel that they're probably still quite fragile as a first round opponent. And until they make that breakthrough, and this is probably the same criticism we had about the Nuggets and Jokic, until they sort of got to the finals and won. All right, I think that's probably legitimate that the T-Wolves, cool, they're starting to win now, but are they a legitimate contender? I don't know. I'm not convinced yet.
Well, I think you look at it, the top two teams are young teams, right? And Denver could be falling victim to a combination of Jamal Murray, obviously missing some time currently, but also the championship hangover, right? So that they know that if, similar to how Golden State operates, we now assume if Denver makes the playoffs in the top 5 or 6, and Golden State makes the playoffs in the top 5 or 6, they're a legitimate contender to go to the conference finals. We know that. So the seeding becomes a little less important. Whereas Minnesota and Oklahoma at present, seem to be pushing that. And they may burn out in the playoffs. You're not wrong. But to say that they couldn't get the top seed, I wouldn't rule it out currently. They're not losing at home. And they're beating some good teams. And then you think about the style of play in the playoffs, it slows down. It becomes a grind. I think their current big lineup, I think the way that they're not built around solid 3-point shooting, I think both of those things bode well in the playoffs.
Hey, look, man, real early days right now. If I remember this, man, your tone could be significantly changed by the All-Star break when they're sort of treading 500 again for one reason or another. Which probably is not shock horror in T-Wolves history that they're back in that position, right? But hey, look, I don't know. Look, right now, I feel it's way too early days, which is in part play how we felt about like the Mavs. Yeah, the Mavs came out hot out of the gates. They were number one, number two in the West for first few weeks, and now they've lost two in a row. They're 9-5. Kyrie's back, and you know they're suddenly slipping down that ladder. With each loss, which is still really tight at the top. So I think it's a bit of fool's gold. There's going to be teams gonna come up, teams gonna go down. I feel like, well, clearly because the T Wolves are at the top at the moment, they're the ones that probably primed to go down.
All right. I feel like similar to how we talked about Harden for a couple of weeks, maybe Minnesota's now been slotted into the regular discussions, and we'll see how they're tracking in a couple of weeks' time.
You want to talk about the Miami Heat too, right? You reckon you're hot on the Miami Heat? What, they're up to number four, 8-5. Spoelstra's got it clicking. Butler got a 30-point game or some shit. Is it? I don't know. Like, what? Are they legit?
So I wanted to talk about the Heat because, the joys of early season. When we talked this time last week, they're sitting at the bottom and we're really not sure if they're going to figure it out. And all of a sudden they go on a win streak and they slot it together. And the recent game where they lose to Chicago after holding a really big lead, clearly that's one that they let slip away. And, if they don't, they're sitting at 9-4, which is tied with the Milwaukee Bucks. This is where this take is actually venturing. This is a team that I don't feel hot on. I think that Miami is going to surge like this. They're going to have really good stretches and very bad stretches, and they're going to end up falling into that mid 40s range like they did every season. So the reason why I'm bringing them up is because, when you look at Orlando there, who are sitting basically tied with them, I think that they're legitimately pushing and they're going to try to be good. And then I think Miami, I'd kind of just doing Miami things. And I think this is going to be a very another stereotypical season where Miami finishes middle of the pack and you're really not sure if they can go to the finals or not. And we're going to be talking at playoff time saying, so would you pick them to go to the finals? And we'll think back to last season and say, yeah, I guess we should. And maybe nothing's going to happen. Maybe everything will happen. I don't know. Do you think there's a Tyler Hero trade, or do you reckon those murmurs are just absolutely ridiculous?
Wow, there's a bit there, man. There's a bit there, man.
Okay.
I
Well,
guess like, look, I guess what is that Miami thing? What is that Miami thing? Isn't this is how my take on the Miami thing. The Miami thing is they don't care about the regular season. They want to make the playoffs, and they care about that 7 game series and getting to 4 Ws before the other team. And that's just it. And whether they're last season like they're showing the underdog on the road to start obviously the series, or they have a home court advantage, I don't think they really care. And to the greater aspect of that, that's pretty smart. I guess, because it's a long season. 82 games is a long season. Yeah, we do talk about load management, and the greater byproduct and motivation behind load management is injuries. And we all know injuries are a huge swing factor in the playoffs and finals. Yeah, that literally can determine whether you win that series or not if your players are healthy or not. So right now they're on a surge, great. They're up to number four. They don't care. They go at the first seed. They don't care. They get the sixth seed. They couldn't care. Right? I think that's the point. That's the Miami thing. So I think again, it's something that the Heat culture has probably sort of developed over the years. That especially since Spoelstra's been there, and the sort of current group of players that are a whole bunch of veterans that played together for many seasons now. In a sense, they've got that level of chemistry. That's probably the same mindset that they have. Which sort of leads to that Tyler Hero question. Who the hell would they trade him for right now? I don't
Hmm.
think there's any market right now for Tyler Hero, which is probably good for him. He can just play his game. He's out at the moment, isn't he? Or is he back? He was out for a few games. I know Duncan Robinson was starting, and obviously playing reasonably well again for a period of time, which he does. He pops up, then he disappears. He gets benched. He pops up. That's sort of what he does, right? So, yeah. So look, I don't know. I don't think Tyler Hero is moving anywhere soon right now until there's actually a potential target.
Yeah, I think one of the rumors, and it probably threads into our next conversation, is that the Bulls are already very much on blow it up watch. Currently sitting at 5-9, out of the playoff contention, and really ever since that like 40 game stretch when they were first assembled and Lonzo Ball was there and they looked like one of the best teams in the East, they haven't done anything. And if I'm recalling correctly, because I'm thinking back through my stages of life that have occurred since then, that was like 2 to 3 years ago that they were relevant and competitive and people had aspirations for them. And, I don't know if you've seen, but like Zach Levine's made trade requests, or there's just this weird mutual agreement that they're exploring or open to a trade. Something is very public, even though it feels like it's not very talked about. That Zach Levine probably won't be on the Bulls by the end of
What?
his contract.
What?
Yeah, no, no.
Where's this insider news you're getting? Like, I know you on social media, and I've deleted my social media. So what's going on, man? Is social media blowing up the feed right now that Zach Levine getting traded, and you're buying into the fake news? I have
There
not seen
is
anywhere. I've not seen
no, no, no,
anywhere
no, no,
that
no.
Zach Levine is on the market right now.
All right, so I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to go through my recent search. So the Ringer has a Zach Levine trade thing from November 16, NBC Sports from November 18, CBS Sports from 11 hours ago,
Yeah.
Athletic from 2 days ago, Sporting News from 14 days ago, Forbes from a day ago.
Where's he going? The
Um,
Lakers?
Obviously, they're one of the teams that have been mentioned. Um, which the rumor is the D'Angelo contract, I think Austin Reeves, Rui, and a couple of picks. I don't know why they would do that per se. Toronto is also sitting in that mix because they've got a couple of picks and the young things. The interesting thing about the Zach Levine trade is, at least from my recollection, sometimes in blow it up history, when a team is going to blow it up, the person that we talk about the most doesn't end up being the blow it up piece, right? So I think that there's real merit that Alex Caruso, Nikola Vucevic, who's on a pretty decent contract, and DeMar DeRozan, who's approaching the end of his contract, I think that they're better candidates than Zach Levine, because Zach Levine, if I'm getting this correct, has another 3 years on his deal at quite a high rate. But he's also someone who I think people forget because he's come back so well. He did have an ACL tear that's been repaired, and he does miss games every season for knee soreness. And as someone with their own ACL tears, once you've had something happen to your knee, the shine is off, the 100% is broken, and you have to deal with some stuff moving forward. And I personally think the Bulls at blow it up potential, if they don't fire their coach sooner rather than later, because I know they had a big 40-point loss the other day. If they don't fire the coach soon, I think it's players that are going to be on the move. And they've got some interesting pieces, right? They've got some interesting pieces that other teams might be interested to give some picks up for, or give some other young players up. And yeah, I don't know.
Look, we've talked about the Bulls a little bit since this big four, which Lonzo Ball was part of, and hasn't played now for it seems like forever, came to fruition, right? And I'm going to ask you a question right now: who's the starting point guard for the Bulls
If it's
right now? Right now, I don't even know. I guess I don't know. Who is it?
Kobe White,
Is it? Is he actually the starting point guard? He's been a point guard on the Bulls for however long since he was drafted, but does he even start? Because last year was, Dominsu or whoever. I don't even know who the name was. Then they had Pat Bev, and Pat Bev's out of
definitely
his
for a little
league.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, see, when we talked about the Bulls, I'm sure if we went back to some of our podcasts previously, I made a really clear point about the Bulls that they need a point guard. They need a clear point guard. They need a Mike Conley. Yeah, they need to trade for Mike Conley. Yeah, and they don't need to give up any of these core
All right.
pieces for, say, a Mike Conley. All right, so I don't know who's out there right now that's available in that sort of a
Well,
respect, because I don't think they're ready to blow this up yet. They just provided extensions
no,
for
they
for the core players here. Obviously, DeRozan's expiring I think end of this year, so they'll play that out more likely than not. They just need a point
okay.
guard. Get a point guard to the
I
Bulls.
all right. I'm gonna slide in here with a bit of a curve. It wasn't on my list of things that I wanted to talk about, but you might be able to help. So a trade partner for the Bulls that could get back a point guard that we don't want to give up too much to do, and we just want to do a straight swap. It feels like the GM series all over again. What if Chris Paul
Yes.
and Zach LaVine did a little bit of a swap?
No. Well, does the Warriors don't even want Zach LaVine? Sure.
Oh,
Surely.
are you sure?
Surely.
Are you sure
Surely.
with the decline of Klay Thompson that we're seeing before us that they wouldn't like a shooting guard who's a little bit athletic? Like, you look at the Warriors as well. Like, we're not talking about the Warriors, but maybe we will. Like, Klay Thompson all of a sudden looks like a man who has had an Achilles and an ACL injury. Andrew Wiggins looks like he lived up to the potential of being the number one draft pick by winning a championship, and now he's good and he doesn't really feel the need to do much else. You got Chris Paul out there who, as good as he's been, I really don't know what they're trying to do there. And then you got Steph Curry at the age of 35, who's starting to look like LeBron, where he needs to score 30 points and be excellent every game for them to even be competitive. And then we didn't even mention that we've got the UFC fighter in training, Draymond Green, just running around doing stuff. Like, maybe Zach LaVine would be a good fit on that team. I don't know.
I. Look. I don't think the Bulls are in blow up mode to stay on the Bulls here. And I think they need to just find the right piece here to unlock what they have. And they saw what they had when they had Lonzo Ball healthy. And it's not as crazy as it sounds. Will that happen? I don't know. We're not pretending that any NBA GMs are watching our podcast, right? And taking
Not
our
with the
advice here. Let's be clear.
I don't want
But
ads.
but hey, I guess would it be that far fetched that that probably would then really free up what they have, which is three sort of scorers and slashers that can all drop 20 a night, but need someone to really help set them up. That's what looks like to me is missing. All right,
But I don't know
which
how many guys are out there. You think of, okay, so some legitimate names, like we say Chris Paul, Tyrese Halliburton are off the table. We would
yeah,
assume that
no,
neither of those players
no,
are going there. So
Halliburton's
maybe
going nowhere.
someone like Tyus Jones, right, who's sitting on the Wizards currently after that
Yep.
trade, great assist to turnover ratio, really plays that role quite well. Can the Bulls and the Wizards facilitate something? Because surely the Wizards don't want to keep whatever core they're assembling here and they're just, keeping assets and flipping. So maybe that's a viable trade that we see later on. I don't know. We know that a lot of contracts wait till December 15 for January 15 so that something can happen. I think they're on blow it up watch. And I think when we get close to those trade deadlines, there's no way that their names aren't in rumors because they already are.
Well, look, I guess you mentioned you thought you reckon the Bulls coach is the one on the hot seat right now?
Yeah, yeah.
And we're
You like that?
back, part two. Who enjoyed that intermission? I got your message. I was like, you know, um, We're still online, man. We're still online. I think my last question I posed to you was like, who's the coach at the Bulls in here right now? Is it
Yeah, so Billy
Donovan?
Donovan,
Yeah,
do you
Billy
think so?
Donovan.
You're going to ask me, is he the most likely coach to get fired?
Right now, right now.
Um,
You reckon he's the coach on the hottest seat right now?
well, you look at the other teams that aren't performing very well. So the Trailblazers, we naturally assumed would not be doing very well. Same for the Wizards. Memphis, I think because of the jar suspension, we don't hold them to accountable, and obviously losing Steven Adams. Um,
How about the
you know, the coach.
Charlotte Hornets. That's probably the
Well,
other
are
question,
they?
right?
Well, obviously having Miles Bridges return, which is a whole topic in itself that I don't think we want to touch. Um, I think like LaMelo Ball has been playing very well recently, so I think that there's some merit to do they need another coaching change. But the issue is that they change a coach every season, so I think some continuity would be good, and they've had some injuries as well. Um, no, like I feel quite confident to say that the Chicago Bulls are probably the most likely team because you look at the teams that aren't doing well. Toronto, well, that they have a new coach, and I don't think most people will be able to answer it. Ty Lue is not going to get fired from the Clippers. Utah, they overperformed last season. That's what you're seeing as a byproduct now. So yeah, I would say that the Bulls is the safest bet to say they won't see the season through because we know a coaching firing is going to occur. Players' meetings that are already occurring, all of the writings on the wall for that. And he's been there for a couple of years, and nothing's like, yeah, you're right. Maybe it is the classic debate of he needs a point guard, so it doesn't matter how good of a coach he is, they're not going to make it work because the personnel's not there. But someone's going to be the fall guy, and he's going to be it.
Is Jeremy Lin available?
The coach or to play?
To play.
Oh man, you read. If I don't know if you've ever seen it, if you do a YouTube deep dive on Jeremy Lin, there's a huge racial tangent about him. So there's a real, he supposedly caught out a lot of racism in the league. He had some issues post COVID specifically. You can probably make the pairing there, and yeah, there's a bit of a consensus that he's been kind of blackballed out of the league, and no one wants him. So I don't know, man.
No one wants him. That's
You
a
give
great.
people a microphone, they come up with stuff, right? So I don't know.
It's funny you're talking about no one wants him because last week we were talking about who wants Chris Middleton, and right now you put Klay Thompson on that hot seat right now. I think yeah. And I just brought up his stats right. 14 points. 14 points, Klay. What's going on 40% shooting and 33% from three? What happened to Klay? He forgot how to shoot, even though.
No. The man has had an Achilles and ACL injury. And the fact that he had even one more good season post all of that is a miracle. That championship that they won, right? I'm going to go on a Suns rant mini, right? That was the Suns championship right there. That season where they could have matched up with Boston, that was their chance. That was their chance. And spookily, eerily similar to when, the Suns could have went to the finals and played the '08 Celtics. Phoenix seems to muck it up before they get to the Boston Celtics in the finals. And those were the seasons that they could have won it. I think Golden State really benefited over playing a young Memphis team, a Luka dominant team, which we all kind of know you can beat in a playoff series. And Phoenix was the team that we all expected to see in the Western Conference Finals against Golden State. And it should have been more competitive, and they fell apart. And yes, they fell apart against Dallas. So, of course, they're going to fall apart against Golden State. But maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe they wouldn't have. I think Luka has this weird pull over them. So this whole rant is, I think Golden State got one extra championship, and we kind of forgot that Klay Thompson returned after 1,000 days of not playing basketball from two very serious injuries. This decline is okay, right? And Bob Myers has even come out and said stuff like this. Like he quit being the GM, right? He's probably left millions of dollars on the table because he's basically said that's going to be an awkward contract negotiation because he's not getting the max. And he's going to want the max. And there's going to be a weird loyalty tax that they're going to have to pay. But he is not worth it anymore. And that's okay. That's okay. He's got nothing left to prove. He's had a very successful career.
So walk me through this. You're saying Clay's decline statistically, even though he put together 69 games last year where he averaged just under 22 points a game, was shooting 43% at the field, 41% from from 3 point, which is sort of his sort of career averages, in line with his career averages. Now in this off season, his legs are shot.
Yep, his legs are shot. No, I'd actually say it's a combination as well. I feel odd giving this man praise considering how anti I've been, but maybe this is also a byproduct of the Jordan Poole effect, right? Where there isn't another shooter on the floor. So, the previous lineups, irrelevant if people gave Jordan Poole credit, he could create something, he could slash. He potentially created a couple of shots for Klay Thompson, even just based off gravity or spacing, etc. Chris Paul maybe doesn't do that. Chris Paul A is playing with the second unit more, but B, that's also an adjustment that Klay Thompson wasn't making with Jordan Poole. So I would say there's probably a little bit of that element, and you could blame it on that as an early slump, but I don't feel that this slump's going to change, right? Your legs are huge. We see it in Kawhi Leonard as well. Like, he can't get lift on a lot of his shots because of the lower leg injuries that have accumulated over time. Every year that passes, it just works against them more and more, right?
So
And I
so
think Klay Thompson's a victim
so
of that.
Clay was okay last season. He's not okay this year. He's 6 months older. That's your
Yeah.
summary.
No, yeah, look, you know what? I feel like I'm the resident lower leg injury expert, and this is where you're just gonna have to trust my expertise on this one. It just hits you. Some days, man. I was walking last year, late last year. I was just walking. I was walking in a shopping center, and then bang, like something popped in my knee, and I was like, oh, that's really sore. I knew I can't walk properly for a couple of days. And I go and get some MRIs, and it turns out it's just cartilage. It's just cartilage just breaking away. Right. So, that's just stuff happens. All right. It's brutal. He's doing okay. He's got 4 championships. He's got millions of dollars. I'd trade places to be bad with him right now. I would
Well,
rather he sit here filming this and I am out there shooting 30% from three. I reckon I could do that. I reckon I could.
well,
So,
you know what's brutal? I've been watching this Rookie of the Year race, right? And I think it's a wide open race. I don't know.
yeah.
Right now, you picked. Did you pick Wembanyama? No, no, you
No,
picked
I
Chet
think,
Holmgren. You should check Holmgren, and I picked Wembanyama, right? And then we've also got a third name here in Asar Thompson, right? Asar Thompson, is that how you say his name? I don't know. And his brother's injured, and like
it's a lot of hours.
he's averaging like a double double. I don't know. It's been a real interesting start to this season for these rookies, and I don't know, man. Who do you reckon in the pole position right now? Because I don't know. I'm not feeling great about Wembanyama.
Yeah. So, okay, Asar and Wemby, respectively, bottom of their conferences, right? And Asar's an interesting one because he's not the focal point, but he's impressive with his rebounding. He's also impressive with his blocks. So he's like defensive, like he's very good defensively, right? Like you could make a case and say he's probably going to finish top 10 in defensive votes in some capacity currently based off how he's playing. Wemby is just a freak, right? And has these 38-point explosions, the 8 block explosions, and also very average games. Chet currently is on the second best team in the West, shooting a 50 40 90 with relatively modest usage. The big debate that's going to come down here is, are you going to value someone who was the main option on their team or played their role perfectly? Chet currently is a rookie who's exceeding expectations in a role when you don't normally see that in rookies. But he's also got a pretty good team around him that helps. Then you've got Wemby being the number one focal point, who's getting ridiculous things happening, but they're not in a winning team, and it may or may not be his role moving forward. We don't really know what that's going to pan out to. I do feel that there will be a LeBron and Carmelo sort of debate when we get to the end. I think Chet and Wemby will be the two-horse race. I think you could make a case strongly either way, barring any injuries that may or may not occur. And it will come down to, do you value a solid role player or an exceptional role player on a good team, or are you going to value a franchise guy on a bad team? And Carmelo and LeBron had the same debate, very similar stats. Carmelo, I think, having a little less success team wise, and LeBron, that's what supposedly got him over. But then there's also the narrative, like Wemby is one of the biggest drawing cards that the league's had, maybe since Zion, and obviously Zion didn't pan out because of injuries. So, is this conspiracy Nick reappearing? Maybe.
I feel they just insulted the whole Oklahoma City Thunder base, fan base here, by suggesting that Chet Holmgren is a role player. Arguably, him and SGA are the building blocks for championships for this organization. He's hardly a role player, I think, at this organization, and his stats are basically backing that up, which is 50, 40, and 90 from the field, man. That's elite already in his rookie season. I know it's early days, and those could take a dip, in that sort of sense, but so far so good. Whereas I think the concern here with Wembanyama, and you're right, okay, he's in a different role. He's in a rebuilding team. They're not expected to make playoffs this year. He's getting a focal point of everything Yeah, the whole NBA world right now is, revolves about around Wembanyama as the hottest rookie, since Zion, like you mentioned, right? But he's at the moment he's shooting what 42%, 28% from 3-point line. Yeah, land. Yeah. Um, this doesn't sound like a 7 footer stat. Yeah, it's like 7'5", it's 7'5", right? It's 7'5", right? It's somehow he needs to start to get this together, and yeah, I don't know. Like you said, if I think right now, if you were to make a pick right now, and if Wembanyama won the Rookie of the Year right now, you would have to say that LeBron Carmelo conspiracy is definitely you know coming to the surface, yeah, because I don't think right now is the best rookie.
Yeah, look, I think out of the two of them, Wemby looks like he produces more impressive highlights and more gasp worthy moments, right? I think that you look at some of that potential, you see it come together. Wemby has his big 38-point game against Phoenix, but then Chet had his 36-point game against OKC, right? And also hits like an overtime hitting shot. So I think they're both going to accumulate these impressive moments. And it is for voters, it's going to come down to what are you going to value more, right? Because let's put Wemby on OKC and let's put Chet on the Spurs. Do you feel like the records respectively change that much? And I would personally say, not to discredit each of their individual talents, but I think Wemby would be in a similar position in OKC, maybe not on the same shooting splits, but definitely a beneficiary of some team wins. And Chet would maybe be struggling a little bit more because he would be the central point in the San Antonio Spurs. So it really depends on how you want to hold it against them.
Just, I'll be honest right now. Maybe you got a better recollection of this NBA history since you're obviously, you followed LeBron fairly closely, probably more closely than me. Correct me if I'm wrong here. The conspiracy between LeBron and Carmelo was purely because of the fact that Carmelo had superior statistics. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Carmelo had either the same or more assists and rebounds along with points. Shooting may or may not have been worse, but I believe the Denver record was maybe his stats were better, but the record was worse. I'm not too sure. But then it might have been a conference issue. So LeBron made the playoffs in the East or just missed the playoffs in the East, but then Carmelo made it. I don't know. I think the general conspiracy is it should have been closer or it should have maybe went the other way. And obviously there's a advertising chosen one angle that they don't want to squander.
But at the end of the day, comes down to a panel of experts, whoever they are. I'm not too sure right now, on top of my head, that determine the winner. Correct. And at the end of the day, I guess any level of voting, whether it's in MVP voting, Rookie of the Year voting, or any sort of vote, really, it's a level of opinion. Isn't that it? There is no set narrative here, like you're alluding to about record, team record, or roles, playing their role successfully or not. How important to statistically measure up versus to the bigger picture of the impact they had on the game, and now with advanced stats too, like plus minus and all these other things. Um, yeah, I guess it's at the end of the day, you could simply say Wembanyama was rookie of the year because he had a much greater impact on the NBA versus Chet Holmgren, which is probably clearly the case.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting race for sure. I do, obviously with both of them and their stature, you worry about an injury, right? So I think an injury might make the critics' decision easier. Not that we want to hope for that. It is great that we have two guys. And Asar being the dark horse, um, I think he's a dark horse for the top three, right? Because obviously Scoot and Brandon Miller go above him. And Brandon Miller is currently skating on no notoriety whatsoever, and no one even knows he plays in the league because I never hear about him. And Scoot, obviously, with the injury, but also, shooting 9% or something from three. Like he's had a rough start. So I think it threads nicely because we just talked about the two rookie of the years, and I'm the stasher of the rookie of the years on my fantasy team. And look, I felt really good 3 weeks in a row, and it must be opposite week because you now come out a victor in your matchup, and I've lost my first matchup, and I'm humbled. I went to the bakery and got a pie. I thought it was mince, but it turns out to be humble is what was in it, and now I'm here. So maybe you break down your successes, and I'll maybe see where I went wrong.
What you went wrong was like you started to proclaim that your team was all championship material in week 3, which is the same thing you said about the T-Wolves at the start of today. And it's still way too early to predict any of these things. And yeah, look, man, I guess it's a long season. It's a long season, you know. Injuries occur. They go both ways. Statistics fluctuate. Jimmy Butler shows up sometimes. The Heat win, and then sometimes you sit on Jimmy Butler and go, "Why the hell did I draft this guy?" I've had Jimmy Butler in previous years, right? And you know he can change your fantasy team from points and percentages, steals, things like that. But then when he like goes out there and gets 15 and 5, and then sits out 3 games out of 4, you sort of go, "What the hell?" So there's so many waves, I think, of a fantasy season that, and something we talked about earlier as well, that because we only got 6 teams in this league, and the amount of talent that's still sort of floating around on the free agency pile, and who's hot, who's back, who's coming back from an injury, so on and so forth, that it's going to be close. And I think right now, after the latter sort of update, you obviously had a sort of a losing week this week, sorry. I obviously went 5-4, which sure I won, but hardly convincing. Obviously I think puts me up to about 12 wins. You'll be about 22 wins. There's a 10 game differential there. That's still about a week and a half. I get it. I get it. But it's still got 17 weeks to go, man. I think you got to look at the bigger long-term picture, man. You just got to get to the top 4. See, that's my logic right now. I know I'm down. I'm last still, I think, all right. But top 4, top 4. I'm ready for playoffs, all right? Let's go Heat culture right now.
Yeah, look, I think, obviously every week we're collecting new data about our teams, right? So, for example, my team scored more points this week than any other week, right? We cracked 844 points, and I still lost to a team that dropped 905. So I would have beaten anyone else in the points category this week. But, like you've said a lot of the time, your matchup sometimes can just not be favorable. I've yet to lose a 3-point percentage, but for the first time ever, I've lost the other 2 categories in percentage. My team statistically shot very, very well from both the field and free throw. But this week, field goal percentage, I actually wouldn't have beaten anyone besides one other team. And free throw, sitting about middle of the pack now, which wasn't the trend moving forward. My team had an above average rebounding week. I've never had that many rebounds, and I only win by 3. Assists, I thought I would have got a bit more. So I went into a bit deeper. If you click on, maybe you're looking at what I do, you get a matchup next to it. You can actually click total stats. So I was like, oh, maybe I lost on minutes this week. Maybe my guys just didn't play as much, and that's why I didn't win. No, I actually played 100 more minutes than my opponent, which made it a little bit harder to swallow. I think you're right. I think having 6 teams, having just up and downs of the season, but also having very high quality players. My guy had a really good Julius Randle week, which sounds like an oxymoron most other weeks. So, there's those kind of habits. Whereas I had a down Tyrese Halliburton week, right? He only had 18 assists across the whole week. So, that would have been a nice boost, in a category that I was kind of close to winning. But I think what we're noticing is I think we need to trade. I don't know. I was sitting there and I was like, we need to trade to spice things up. I don't know. We need to trade to spice things up.
Hey, let me before you go to a trade, before you go to a trade wire right now, and start hitting the phones to make some crazy trade, Danny Ainge, all right? Would you not consider picking up Miles Bridges?
I looked at it. I really did. For me, I think currently what's interesting, I've obviously stashed James Harden, and now I'm a beneficiary. I had Westbrook, and now Westbrook's taken a dip, and now Westbrook's sitting on the outer here. The trap with Westbrook is he probably fits in that Jimmy Butler category where he might have that game where he goes off for 30, or he might have that game where he gets 7 steals, So Westbrook sits on that potential. But I think the thing is, if you have too many of those guys on your team, you're in trouble. And that's what I've noticed with Chet and Wemby, respectively. Chet is shooting Chet's great from percentages, but he doesn't always give you raw stats. And sometimes he has these real quiet games where he has 18 and 4 and 3. And then he obviously has those big games where he has 36 and 7 and 8 and 10, etc. And same for Wemby. Wemby has some down ones as well, and then has some really big ones. So, that's the rookie experience. They're going to be fluctuating all season for me. I hope that they find a nice stable ground for me moving forward. But, even Paolo Banchero, I thought he was starting to put it together. He had that 27 bomb, but he's mellowed out again. And I'm not happy about that because, he I wouldn't have picked him to be worse than Wagner, right? And that's obviously what's happening with them. But admittedly, Orlando's winning, so maybe they're figuring out their roles a bit better, and that's a role that he's got to play. I mean, I look at my team and I look at Kyle Kuzma, Westbrook, even DeAndre Ayton, Paolo, all the guys that are on the trade block. I'm kind of happy with my Tyrese Maxey and Halliburton respectively. I think that's panned out well. I like Chet. I like Wemby.
So who are you trading, man? Who are you trading? What's this
I'm
crazy
gonna trade.
trade?
I'm gonna trade. Look. I think Paolo, Kuzma, Westbrook. I think that's a nice package. But you know what? I understand that other people have to get something. I can't just be completely selfish. I think if the right trade offer came along and you wanted Chet or Wemby, I would seriously consider it. I think you gotta take Westbrook, or you gotta take Kyle Kuzma, or you gotta take Paolo.
So what do you want? So here's how fantasy works, yeah. Okay, you basically said Chet and Wemby are now on the block, yeah. If you're interested, give me a
Or
call,
Wemby.
right?
It's one or the other. You're not having
Wemby,
both.
or Wemby, yeah. So what statistic are you looking to improve if you were to let one of those go?
It feels wrong to say, but I'm losing in steals every week. Not that steals is an easy category to pump,
Okay.
but rebounds. I know I had a good rebounding week this week, but I haven't any other week.
Okay.
So
you want a beast that can grab you 10, 12 boards a game, and you would consider giving up one of these rookies in exchange. Is that what you're saying?
potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially, I need to see what comes through.
Well, look, I'll go to the drawing board, and I guess every other GM in our league, do they even, is that where we get our 10 hits from? from them trying to get some insider information here?
Probably not.
Probably not. But if they did, they'll know right now that Chet and Wemby are available. If they've got a double big man that they're looking to offer up, and they're looking for the upside of these rookies, maybe continuing to build on their game, right? Because I guess there's definitely a lot of upside for these young guys. It's funny actually talking about trades. I put out a couple of trades, this week too. I got a current trade. I don't want to spoil the secret right now. This isn't the rumor wire, but I'm looking for the two-time MVP to join my team right now. So I put a few assets on the block. Will they take it or not? That's up to them. Probably not, because there's a whole bias against me, right? So, but that's okay. I'm like whatever that organization that they don't want to trade with, right? Because they've, that's the case. So look, I don't know. I think trades are nice. I must say, sometimes in fantasy you sort of go, oh, it'd be nice to make a trade. Yeah, and I made trades before, obviously. And then there's some seasons you just sit there and just the whole season no one makes a trade. Yeah, and obviously you don't know what's going on behind that all the trades get declined or anything like that. All right, but no one just makes a trade. No one wants to pull a trigger. No one wants to take the risk that if they give up that player they currently have, and then that player goes crazy, then that was a bad trade, and then they got egg on their face. Isn't that what it is?
Well, that's the apprehension for me with Chet and Wemby, is that we've seen the upside games and we've seen the down games, and obviously, it's a marathon, right? So, for Wemby's 38-point game, and then he has a 14-point game to follow it. If those are these only 2 games in the week, he had 50, right? But if I know that I have another player who's going to chip away at 20 pretty much every game, and the allure of a 38-point game sounds great, but by the end of the week, the other player ended up with more points anyway. So these considerations are huge. I think the interesting one to monitor currently is the Clippers situation. James Harden's addition hasn't hurt me because James Harden has been activated and he's actually given me stats. But they're clearly hurting Westbrook's stats. So that's a decision I'll have to make. That's probably a free agency thing. I don't know if anyone would be willing to pick him up or not. He's probably similar to the Giddey at the moment. We know Giddey has potential, and we know Westbrook has potential.
Chet's taking Giddey stats away from him. Simple as that. Just like Miles Bridges has taken stats away from Gordon Hayward, and like you're saying, Harden's taking stats away from Westbrook. That happens all the time.
But it's not even. But Harden's not just taking it away from Westbrook. It's also impacting Kawhi and PG respectively. And we may not see them plateau. We may not see them even out for another 10, 15 games. So those are considerations to make. And then there's also people who are sitting on players like Ja Morant. And can you convince them to bite the bullet now and maybe benefit in a couple of weeks? Injury trades are always a tricky one. I've looked at Bradley Beal, for example. Can I flip a couple of my players for Bradley Beal, so to speak, and just stash him and come back and hopefully that he fits in and gives me some good stuff?
So you can pick here. I'll give you a player that's giving you 10.3 rebounds and 1.2 steals a game. Meets both your criteria right now. So, are you putting Chet or are you putting Victor on the block here?
It's tricky. Chet gives me great percentages. Wemby has
The
the
higher
higher.
upside.
He has the higher upside. It's a tricky one. Who's who's the player that's averaging 10 and 10?
I'll give you a name once you tell me who you're putting on the block first.
I don't want Nick Claxton. If you're about to offer me Nick Claxton, I dropped Nick Claxton at the start for a reason,
You
man.
wanted
So you can get
rebounds,
out.
10.3 rebounds a game, 1.2
No,
steals.
no,
It's got some
no,
upside. It's not Nick Claxton. Who are you
no.
putting on the board? It's not Nick Claxton.
It's not. I'm actually insulted. I feel like talk should end because I'm
It,
insulted. I
it's
feel
not
like
it's not even Nick Claxton. I'll give you a name as soon as you tell me which one you prefer to trade.
well, I'm worried that you're going to offer me a similar trade that I had a couple of weeks ago with the Anthony Davis one.
Anthony
And
Davis was a good trade and you should have taken it, but you turned it down. I have no idea why. He's done like the number one ranked power forward in the league. You should have taken it.
because you were about to take the number one rated guard in the league, I think that's why I hesitated on that. Um,
One for one, that sounds fair enough. So I guess a rookie for a rookie. I'm giving you Osor Thompson. And you can give me Chet or Wemby. I don't mind, man. Just let me know which one you want to pass over.
I don't like either of those. I don't like either of those. I think you're trying to extort me on camera, and that should be shame. It's
All
terrible.
right. Until next week, right?
Cool, cool, cool.